Kristen, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and you came from a long ways away, relatively speaking. And you've gone through a lot of stuff to get to this point too. Your journey, especially given where you live in Canada, especially given the context of 2020 and onward, is incredibly inspiring. You are incredibly courageous, very bold and brave, and you're really an incredible example for so many other people. And I just wanted to say that up front. So
thank you.
Yeah. And thank you for being here again.
To start off the conversation. Cheers. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm serious though. It's like, yeah, it's your journey is so incredible. So if you could just give a background regarding your schooling and everything like this. And I think that's an appropriate place to start the conversation, because that's really where this conversation is going to go. It's just your journey, because even setting aside the speaking out and things like that, which we'll get to as well, just your journey of overcoming cognitive dissonance, your journey of overcoming the various facets of your indoctrination to the position that you're in now is amazing. And I guess I'll just preface this by saying that I've interviewed a variety of doctors who have come to similar conclusions as me regarding health, the pharmaceutical industry, the human body, even germ theory and things like this. But we were talking off camera about how I think for whatever reason, nurses can be even more indoctrinated and more viciously defensive of the allopathic paradigm than doctors can be, at least in my experience. And speaking online, speaking with friends who are nurses, they can be incredibly vicious and huge defenders of the allopathic paradigm. So that's why I'm super stoked for this conversation. So go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, it's really interesting because obviously over the last few years, I've had a bit to look back and reflect on the whole journey. How did I end up in nursing to where I am now? And I was always an outdoors person, nature, camping, and then I actually wanted to go into environmental sciences. I'd read this book and it seemed great. They were like, on an adventure in Alaska to like test water samples. They're outside. And I was like, that's what I want to do. And, but I was, told, guided, that's great, but they don't really pay well. I can't get a job. It's hard. Go into nursing. You like taking care of people. You can still travel with it and it's good money. And I was like, all right, well, that sounds good. I like the travel aspect. You could have been
studying geoengineering. The reason I bring that up is because the last guy I interviewed is trained in environmental sciences, and now he does geoengineering related stuff.
There you go. See, there's just, I think sometimes there's so many things out there that you're just not aware of. You just kind of get on this path. And so I ended up in nursing. It was fine. I found an old journal and I actually in first year wrote, did I make the biggest mistake of my life? So I must have known something then, but this is how powerful the indoctrination and programming is, because I must have known something, but through 4 years of schooling, it was the University of Western Ontario, and I bought into all of it. And I came from a household where we had no medicine in our house. Like, you have a headache, my dad's like, drink more water. Like, we had nothing. But I bought into all of it and loved it, and ended up in pediatrics my first year. And then I spent my entire career was mostly in neonatal intensive care unit. But yeah.
Wow. And when you're talking about your childhood growing up in that home environment, was it overtly holistic, or was it just like, hey, we tend to lean more towards natural things, but it wasn't like overtly crunchy family?
No, definitely not. My mom will tease and say, she's like, well, we just didn't have a lot of money. So it was like just cheaper to get whole foods than it was to get like packaged stuff. So real food, not a lot of, things, when I got into babysitting, it was like great and go into their cupboards and get the little snacks that we don't have, but it wasn't overtly, it was just, by means. And that's what we had. And we just, was good health, exercise, stay active, and basics, right? Simple.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And then so when it comes to nursing and the education that you received, I'm actually not familiar. I'm definitely more familiar with medical school and what they receive in terms of education, but I don't know much about nursing. So what was your education like?
Yeah, they had just changed it around the time where I'd entered into nursing. So where you had to have a degree, university degree. Prior to that, they would go to college for 2 years and it was a lot more hands-on. But then they required that you needed this university degree. And so from 2002, 2006, that's when I was in there, but it was a lot of theory. They started teaching a lot of theory. I remember this one course called Self and Others. It was like just the biggest fluff of just trying to teach like how you care for people and how you care if they have different like, traditions or cultures. And I look back now and it's like, oh my gosh, like what you're teaching, like you don't stand by. But I remember we would have this huge book on pharmaceuticals, toxicology, medicine.
Mhm.
Then we had a little book on nutrition, just a little book. And then I know we're going to get into it later, but there was nothing on vaccines or health or anything else to do with that. But it's like, you got to memorize every single medicine that's out there. And that whole idea of quackery is real. Like anything else is nonsense. This is what, you need. This is how you take care of people. This is health. You're out there, you're helping people, you're healing, like, kind of that, I want to say like hero status, like
Right.
you're front lines, you're taking care of people. Like you have this important job to do.
Those are definitely the sentiments that are projected on
Mhm.
nurses, and like people that become nurses, I think are doing it for what are noble reasons, right? They want to be the people who are caring for others. And the same applies for doctors, but the same also applies for soldiers who sign up for the military.
Mhm.
They think they're defending their country, they're defending freedom, when, in reality, they're not.
Mhm.
So it's almost like you can't blame the nurses themselves
They
for...
come in with good hearts. We just want to help.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
And in terms of you already covered that you barely got any education on nutrition, if any at all. Like, was there actual education
There was a
on that?
course, but
Okay.
it would be like, the American standard diet. So it was the Canadian food pyramid, like Canadian food, like just,
Okay,
yeah,
so
terrible.
nonsense.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
nonsense. But then in terms of the education that you received on vaccines, what did that look like?
Yeah, none.
None.
No, greatest invention ever made, keeps kids alive. They all need it. Here's a schedule. Go at it. Mhm.
Got it. Okay. So interesting too, because nurses are primarily the ones that are administering the vaccines themselves. And aside from just being told the schedule, you're not really given anything else. Was there any supposed mechanisms of action covered regarding vaccines, or... It's probably a long time ago, so I'm not expecting you to remember all pieces of it.
It was a long time ago.
People ask me questions about my college, and I did a brain dump, especially when I realized
if you
some
don't
of
need
those
any more,
nonsense.
it's
Like,
like
I don't
that can leave
freaking
my
know.
head. Yeah.
Right.
It was like the whole thing of, it was a live virus or some kind of, attenuation of that. And, your body builds up antibodies. So now it's ready. So you're introducing this pathogen so your body can get ready. So when it's introduced to it out in the environment, it knows what's to do.
So the basic stuff that all of us hear regarding how vaccines work. Okay. That's really important to hear, because like I said, the people who are most vicious that I've come across in my own direct experience are nurses, and a lot of them are former friends of mine, let's put it that way. And some of them have sworn that they know far more about vaccines than I do, and I just kind of let it be, because I'm like, there's absolutely zero chance that that's the case at this point. But and then in terms of the quackery piece that you just mentioned, I'm really interested in that. So I'm sure this is going to be different across various education across the world for nurses, but they did cover that holistic leaning stuff was quackery. They framed it as that.
Mm-hmm. I can't remember now, looking back, I'll be honest, if they actually used that word, but it was that sentiment.
The sentiments, right.
Of there. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like expressly taught, but I'm sure it was brought up in conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That, like all those like natural things, aren't right, or you got to research that, or they're not really researched, or, it's just not helpful. This is health. This is the path.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you sent me a video, a few videos to watch. And one of the videos you talked about how your gateway into questioning really all things started with nutrition. Can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, you're a father, and I think, all these things that we just kind of take for granted, we're going through the motions of our own life, and it's fine. But when you bring a child into the world, things change. And my first son changed my life in a way that I never thought was possible. You think, okay, sleepless nights, got to care for this being, all these things, but I wasn't prepared for the complete life-changing trajectory that he sent us on. So I see it now as this divine intervention in my life. But when he was born, it was 2015. And all of a sudden it was being pressed upon me to look into food. What are you going to feed your baby? What are his first foods going to be? You know, it's going to shape his foundation to his mood, behavior, every cell in his body. And at first I was this cocky nurse, like, no, I took nutrition. We live, you know, a healthy lifestyle. I know how to feed my baby. And it was one of those things like look into it. And it was kind of like, fine. He's sleeping in my arms. And then I clicked a documentary and I don't know, maybe it was Food Inc., who knows? And I was hooked. And I was like, what? They're just talking about things differently than I'd ever heard before. So being my first and didn't have anywhere to go. So he would just often sleep in my arms, and documentary after documentary after documentary. And I was just obsessed with learning about food. And I realized I don't know this information. Here I am, a nurse, and I'm supposed to be educating parents. You know, I work with babies and I'm supposed to be teaching them, you know, foods and all this. And I was like, I don't know this information. Where are they getting it from? Like, how can we actually inform and educate? So I actually enrolled at the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition.
Why did you choose natural nutrition? Was that just like a prominent organization, or?
Yeah, it was, in my hometown. It's
So it's not that you were
Canada-wide.
specifically seeking out, I need natural nutrition. It's just that happened to be one of the organizations you found.
A little bit. I was starting to kind of be around people. I was in a stroller boot camp.
Okay.
And there were some people around me talking about things a little bit differently.
Got it.
And the seeds were starting to be planted. And it's interesting, right? Because you're only able to receive what you're ready to hear.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it was enough that I was ready to learn a little bit about food. And they were talking about things, you know, about holistic ways. And even that concept was kind of new to me. And so I wanted to learn more. And I was looking at integrative nutrition school, and then CSNN was the other one. So I picked CSNN. It was close by. And yeah, I did that part-time for 2 years. And that is where all the light bulb moments came off and pieces kind of came together for me.
And so how did that, just keep going, how did that segue into then vaccines, then germ theory, then all the other things?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I like to know things.
Yeah.
I want to know once I started that path, right? I think once we open one door, then it leads to the next, and we all just keep going. And eventually we end up kind of in a similar place, but it takes one door to open.
Totally.
And so for me, it was food. And then listening to health, I remember thinking, health is so simple. Like, why didn't I learn this? I did 4 years of nursing. I'm learning more about health and wellness in the human body in this 2-year part-time program than I ever did in my 4 years like nursing degree.
And was it that the information you were receiving in this course just made more sense in your body?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I could see where the academically inclined intellectual who is like strictly coming from the supposed evidence-based sense could even look at some of that stuff and be like, well, this is not as rigorously studied as some of this other stuff, so therefore it might not be true. And that's where it does require that you can balance that out with the context of corporate capture and industry narratives and things like this, and then also a deep intuitive understanding of what just makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think that's it too, because I was more of like a hands-on person, like show me, like show me the evidence. I don't want to like read a paper. Sure, that's helpful. It has its place, but like show me what that looks like. And when I was working, and again, veils kept, peeling off and new set of eyes to see things. But I'll come back to that. So it was health and wellness was so simple. Why didn't I, know about this? Just a different way of looking at things. But the biggest kicker then started to unfold was, okay, if I'm so concerned about what I'm feeding my child, what's going on in their body, their environment, like what are they being injected with?
So it naturally came up for you.
It naturally just kind of like progressed. And I was like, okay, so these are conversations we're starting to have in like the school I was in. And it was just kind of like, wait a second, there's a missing piece here. Like, obviously I'm concerned what he's going to eat. And we went like, I was very strict on what he was eating, what he was around and everything. And thought if I'm this strict about this, like this aware, like, well, what am I putting in his arm? Because at this point I still had that indoctrination programming that I didn't know enough. And I was starting to ask our pediatrician questions, even that, well, I'll come back to the birth, but I was starting to ask our pediatrician questions about these vaccines.
And this was with your first?
This is my first, yeah. Each child was a different cool. like layer.
Yeah.
So I was starting to ask her about vaccines, and she just pushed so much fear on me because I was like, it's not feeling right. I'm just looking for more information. That's who I thought I could, go to, Then later on, she's making fun of me with some colleagues on social media, but
wow, for real?
Oh yeah. Yes.
So what were the questions you were bringing her?
like it was back really because I was like chicken pox. I didn't understand the other ones. Like I didn't really get rotavirus, like diphtheria, mumps, measles, all these things. But it was, I
Do
just
they give
thought,
Hep B in Canada?
no,
Okay.
I think they just started that, to be honest.
my
Been out of
goodness.
it, but I know my first job was in the States, and I remember just being horrified even then.
Really? Wow.
Of like,
yeah, I mean,
it didn't make sense.
Insane.
Yes.
It's insane. It
like,
makes
are
zero
they
sense.
like walking around needles? This like stripping?
Right.
Like I don't get it. Anyway, but that one did stick out to me. But I was just chicken pox. I was like, I don't understand. I had chicken pox. Like it's fine. We all had it.
Yep, I had it too.
And and I just, why do we need a vaccine for it? And she's like, well, because I just had this case where this child had, internal chicken pox in her organs, and she's in the, pediatric ICU. And I was like, okay, that still doesn't make sense. That's one case. What is the whole history behind that? But there was so much fear being pushed on me in that appointment that I did. I caved. The what ifs, I now say, like, what ifs are a slippery slope to despair.
Totally.
And I later on now, regret decisions, but we can't regret. You just look forward, make the best that you can with what you know. But I remember walking out of that appointment being, I'm never going to make a decision based on fear again. Like never. So either it's, yes, we're doing this because this is how I feel, this is what I know, or no, we're not. But it won't be a fear-based decision. So after leaving that appointment and what I was learning in school, I was like, I need to face the fear. And we never really learned about the childhood illnesses in school either. Like we knew of them, but I wanted to know how are they acquired? How do they get it? Is there other treatments, other remedies? Like what can be done? Like what's the worst case scenario? Like show me the worst case scenarios of all these. And it was interesting because once I did that for every childhood illness that they have a shot for, my fear was completely removed. I was like, none of this matters in how we're living nowadays, like what we have going on. Like, I'm not worried about you acquiring any one of these, so-called childhood illnesses.
Did you find this like a book like Dissolving Illusions?
It was Dissolving Illusions.
Okay, that's what I was going to guess.
It.
I'm like,
yeah.
Because if you looked at publicly available information, I could see where one would be like, oh my God, like WebMD type stuff. Like, oh shit, this is still pretty scary. Okay, this is
why I
need to get
the history
vaccines.
of it, right?
Yeah,
and
I was learning the true history. Yeah.
And so Dissolving Illusions was like the first book that I dove down, and it was interesting because that was enough for me to not need to vaccinate.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm like, okay, well, I will look into vaccines. I didn't know anything about the adjuvants, like what that was needed, how that mechanism of breaking into the cell.
You don't even really need to when you read something like Dissolving Illusions.
No, it was enough for me.
Yep.
But I was like, okay, so I learned about the ingredients and everything in the vax. But at that point, I was like, I already know it's not necessary.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter about these vaccines. But that was kind of the path that I took. And then I started speaking out because again, I'm a neonatal intensive care nurse. I'm administering these shots.
Yeah.
And so once that bubble was completely burst for me after understanding this information, it's like, what are we doing here? And then your eyes are ready to see when you're ready to receive. And I started to see things differently in the unit. And so then I was ready to kind of actually see what we're doing here. So we would have our mycoprems, they're 23-week-olds, and we would give them their 60-day shots. And 23 weeks, they're not even full term yet.
Wow.
So they would be, growing, thriving, like doing well. And in the step down unit, which means they've left the intensive care unit and they're stepped down, and give them their 60-day shots and immediately just start having, we call them spells, bradycardias, their heart would stop, apneas, they would stop breathing, and they would need to go back onto invasive breathing support, whether it was a ventilator or like a CPAP or BiPAP. BiPAP means they're giving breaths through a mask. I started to question it. Like, are you guys seeing this? Are you seeing like
so
this?
It's
like
a pretty
effect?
clear pattern.
It was very clear.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other things too. But as soon as I started to question that, I was just then like just labeled this crazy nurse, eye rolling, like, but we would hand off report after the 12-hour shifts and we'd be like, baby B, had just had his shots today. So having a lot of spells, like to be expected. Like it became the norm after this. Like this is what is expected after these shots. This is a normal side effect to happen. And that obviously just stopped sitting well with me when I saw the pattern here. Because I was like, okay, when we're administering blood, we are sitting at that baby's bedside and taking their vitals every 15 minutes. And if there's a change, we stop it and we assess for anything, blood pressure, heart rate increasing, whatever it is. And we do this for any other medication.
Mm-hmm.
But for some...
That's the point of a NICU. essentially.
Yes. And even in adults, like anytime there's an adverse reaction to a medication, we stop and we examine, we assess, and we change. But for whatever reason, vaccines can have this detrimental effect, but it is an accepted, normal side effect.
Wild. That is insane.
Mm-hmm.
When you were facing this sort of cognitive dissonance yourself, it doesn't even sound like cognitive dissonance at this point. It sounds like, no, I'm pretty sure there's a clear pattern here. Like you felt so sure in yourself. But when you were going through that process, was there any amount of you that sort of had to reconcile with and forgive yourself for having administered vaccines yourself too?
Still do.
Yeah.
Still do. Yeah. It was a long time I was doing that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we were talking off air, and I'm sorry if that's like quite a personal question, but I think it's helpful for other nurses, doctors to hear that it's like the forgiveness piece, I think, is so important. And I think this is what prohibits nurses, doctors, other people in healthcare to even look into vaccines, because it's having to reconcile, one, that, okay, we were misled. Why were we misled? How could we be misled? And having to go deeper on those questions leads you to conclusions that you may not be ready for, because it looks like a total career change. It looks like, I have X $100,000+ in student loans, and I'm now inside this paradigm. What do I do? Yeah. Right? It looks like all of those things accompanied by having to reconcile with that you administered something that was fundamentally harmful to other kids. And like, whether the nurses who are sitting on the fence or are so resistant to look into vaccines, or the doctors who are so resistant to look into vaccines, realize that consciously or not, I think that that's ultimately a big chunk of what is sitting below the surface. Yes, there's some like identity in it as well, right? Some ego, like I know better than you. You really do like attach your identity to the paradigms that you were indoctrinated into. Like it happens to so many people, right? You become so defensive of that position. But I think the deeper thing is having to reconcile with that, and then the shame and guilt that comes up, and having to face that shame and guilt.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just the betrayal of it and the lies. And it was a lot. And then there's anger that comes with it too. And, but then I also see that as fuel now to get the information out. And it's like, okay. And then, but also remembering to have that compassion piece, because it's so easy once you know all this to get upset people when they're not there. But I have to constantly remind myself of where I was at, where I came from. And I know we're going to get into it later, but like I at one point thought home birth should be illegal. I was very adamant.
Wow.
Yeah. Adamant it should be illegal.
Look at you now.
I know. That's what I mean. Like, that's why I have to remember to have compassion when people are like not there yet. I had fights with friends. Like one of my dearest friends, like, thank goodness, we reconciled. But there was a moment where I had just had my baby and she was pregnant and telling me all this stuff. And I was like, you're so reckless. Like, that's so dangerous. And
she was wanting to have a home birth.
Yeah. Yeah. And all natural. And it's just when you see the worst of the worst. And I think this is where the indoctrination programming comes from as well. Because when that is all you see like the microprems and these sick babies and this and birth and, we would go into the labor and delivery rooms, high risk pregnancies. I see all that differently now. But you think it's dangerous. Like, thank goodness the medical system is here to save all this from happening. But it is such a small population, like percentage of babies that are in there, that we forget about, how do we get here from like thousands and thousands of years, and what else is going on beyond these walls. But you get that blanket statement, and that's all. Yeah,
and thank God allopathic medicine is there for those very true emergency situations, of which there are very few. But then you have to really start questioning how much of these emergency situations were brought on by things that allopathic medicine pushes.
That was the next place I had to go to.
Or the absence of true information regarding health, because allopathic medicine has demonized it so much.
That's absolutely. And that was a big part I had to come to as well. That was starting to realize, I was like, wait a second, like, okay, it looks like we're trying to like help here, but I think that, the interventions that we're using is causing the problem. And now we have to save them from that. And then it's like, thank goodness for the medical system for saving you. But it's like, but you caused it in the first place. And it's this like circle. And that's really hard for a lot of people to see past as well. When they've had a traumatic event or something has happened and they, they're like, oh, thank you for saving us. But it's like, but they caused it. And that's really, really hard for people to see too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you deal with that like level of guilt that you experienced having administered vaccines? I'm just curious to know, because like you seem like you handle it really well. And I think, again, this could be another point of medicine for other people who are coming across this podcast episode and maybe nurses themselves, and maybe their partner was like, hey, I really want you to hear this. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, when you know better, you do better, and you do the best you can with the information that you have. And that's what I had to keep just reminding myself was like, I didn't know it. I didn't
you're
know
coming
then.
From genuine intentions of like
wanting
to
help and
yeah.
care, and, a big heart, which most of us have, or, even, my first son, like wanting to do what was right for him. I remember when I mentioned the fear, it was like, okay, well, what if something did happen to him and I could have stopped it? What if something does happen and it was my fault because I said no? Like, all those what ifs I talked about, the slippery slope to despair. Right. But it's, we just want the best for, individuals or children, but knowing, okay, but I didn't have that information in my hands. But now that I have the information, it's my job to go now share it.
Yeah.
And get that out and be like, look, I didn't know this, but now I do. And I feel obligated to tell you. And, that's when I first started getting in trouble with my college, was 2018. When my second son was born, still in the hospital. But that was the first. I refused every single shot for him in 2018. Meaning he was still born in the hospital, but I was starting to be aware this was the next layer. So I refused all shots, immunizations. And I remember just holding him in my arms and watching him grow and just thinking, you're just so perfect. Like, you're just so perfect exactly how you are. Like, what a lie we've been told that you need anything outside of your like divine design and me. Like, that was just such a moment, just watching this boy just grow and thrive.
Epic. It really is incredible to watch. So I have 3 kids who've never received one of them, and it's really beautiful to witness. And like, I love being in the Austin area for many reasons. One of which is there are so many families in this area who have adopted the same sentiments, who have never given any of their kids any of those things, and they're all doing exceptionally well. And yes, sometimes they, quote, get sick, but then we trust their body to do exactly what it was designed to do. And this is an expression of health. That's what symptoms are. It's when we're inundated with the toxicity of the modern world, and like the modern world has trade-offs. It has costs and benefits in many ways. But some of the costs of that is that we may be exposed to more toxicity. And so our body's going to have to express symptoms to get out that toxicity a little bit more. But it's a beautiful expression of health ultimately. And it's trusting that their bodies are doing exactly what they're designed to do, even if it can be a little bit scary sometimes. And I'm sure you've had moments as a parent, I know I have, where I'm like, it's really testing my trust that I have in their bodies. And in every single case, when we do that, and I can only speak for myself, and of course there's situations that occur for other people that I empathize with that are very challenging, where they genuinely had to go to the hospital or their child ended up passing away. Stuff does happen, but the point being that in the overwhelming majority of cases, I feel that urge to be like, oh, do I need to take them to a healthcare professional? Or like, oh, am I making the right decision? And the more that I just lean into trusting that their bodies know exactly what to do, if I give them the right things that they need within the context of whatever they're dealing with, naturally, they'll be okay. And they are.
And the amazing thing with that is that they learn that trust. They get to trust their bodies that now. And the world, it's a tough place to live in, right? There's challenges, there's hardships, there's all these things that you have to overcome. But if you learn to trust your body in those moments, that I can get over hard things, my body is here to support me, not against me. And it's like, okay, that was really difficult, but we did it. And you did it with the support of a parent. So then you built up that bond and trust that they're here for me too. Like, we will get through this. It's kind of like a metaphor too, to get through, the other challenges that come up in life. It's like, okay, I can do hard things. My body can heal. My body is like here to help me and not against me. And I just think it sets them up to be stronger in all areas of life as well.
Amen. Yeah, so well said. Could you share some of the information that you came across aside from dissolving illusions, and you can get specific if you want to, regarding the truth about vaccines? And like, let's pretend you're speaking to other nurses here, and go as deep as you want, but I also just want to like reference real quick. I'll link some episodes in the show notes where I have gone deeper with some other people regarding vaccines as well, for people who want to learn more. And I'd also love to hear resources that, books you've read or things like this, but just get specific as you can, on some of the information you learned about vaccines.
Yeah. It's one of those things you kind of touched on, like once you kind of know,
Mm-hmm.
So I dove deep enough and I was like, okay, I know enough. And then it was like on to the next thing. So my son, so in 2018 was when I was doing the deep dive into childhood illnesses. So we mentioned dissolving illusions. Then there was a lot of Dr. Thomas Cowan. And
you were looking at Cowan back then.
Yes.
Okay. Vaccines, autoimmunity,
exactly.
and changing the nature of childhood illness. Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah. There was Goodbye Germ Theory, Virus Mania. And then what was it? The Nourishing Traditions. Yeah, because we had that book in my nutrition school.
Oh,
so there was a lot of stuff.
I see where some of the picture, like the pieces are coming together then. If you're already reading like Weston A. Price, Sally Fallon Morell, Cowan material back then, that was the best gateway.
Yes. Yeah. So that was it for me. So once I knew all that, and it just made sense. And then plus I have living proof. Like I said, the papers and the research are great, but when you actually see it, and you see it among other children, because I was started to be part of this community now that was having home births, not vaccinating and all these things, and seeing it. Actually, that's funny because my one close friend, she's like a dear friend of mine, when I first was meeting her around this time before I knew, she was starting to talk about, it's amazing people are placed in your life to drop all these little like seeds, and you pick it up when you're ready. But I talked about food, and then the next thing was they started talking about not vaccinating. And I remember just being like, whoa. I wasn't ready for it yet. And I called her like, I don't know if I can be friends with this anti-vaxxer. Like I was like, so that person. But enough was, planted, learning about it, and then seeing it. So those were kind of some of the resources that I like dove into. But then I started, speaking more about it at work. Oh, this was the piece I wanted to... It was very interesting. My colleagues were so open to learning about food. They knew I was in this program. They loved it. They wanted to know how they could, become healthier, what foods to eat. Could this food help this condition? All these things. But as soon as I took it a step further into vaccines, it was like that door just closed. It was like no more wanting, like they no longer wanted to listen to me. Like that was it. And I found that to be an interesting piece of the puzzle. It's like, what is up with this programming around vaccines where we can talk about all these things, but as soon as we get here, like conversation over? Yeah,
it's wild. It's so wild to see that. Yeah. And it's still commonplace even like now post 20, it's, the year 2025, and it still occurs because we have conversations with our neighbors and things like this regarding some of these topics about food, but you can just tell that they're not going to go there on shots. Like they just will not go there. It's such a hard spell to break.
Yeah.
So here's some of the low-hanging fruit info on vaccines, and I'll put this in the show notes too. And this is my article that I published on Substack, 10 reasons I'll never get another vaccine. So 1, aluminum adjuvants are not proven safe. Aluminum adjuvants in vaccines are allegedly used to provoke an immune response, but their safety is based on incredibly flawed comparisons. The WHO and other health agencies cite studies on ingested aluminum, which is largely excreted, rather than injected aluminum, which is absorbed differently and can persist in the body. Research by Dr. Christopher Exley and others suggests aluminum can accumulate in the brain, contributing to neurotoxicity, autoimmune disorders, and developmental issues. Some studies have found elevated aluminum levels in the brains of autistic individuals. Despite all of this, regulatory agencies continually dismiss concerns without proper long-term safety studies. And I know that there's a study that just came out of Denmark that is supposedly closing the door on vaccines and aluminum and autism and things like this. And I'm writing another article on that. But another big piece, and there's 10 points in this article, but another big piece is that there's 0 double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized trials proving vaccine safety. Vaccines are not tested against a true inert placebo. They're tested against another vaccine or an aluminum-containing substance, so there's no real control group in them. Thousands and thousands and thousands of parents report vaccine injuries. Of course, vaccine makers have a long-standing history of corruption. They're not liable for injury or death, which is insane. And of course, we talked about dissolving illusions, disease, mortality, declining. And then the other big one is that we know the CDC has this data, but they still have not published a study or any data showing and comparing health outcomes of fully unvaccinated kids to fully vaccinated kids. And they have the data, but people like Dr. Paul Thomas, Brian Hooker, Dr. James Lyons Wheeler, they've put out a series of studies that definitely lend credence to the understanding that fully unvaccinated kids have far better health outcomes than their vaccinated counterparts. Do you have anything else to share?
There was one, how to keep your kids healthy despite medical advice or something. That
okay.
Yeah.
That's another book?
Yeah, there's like so many out there.
Oh, that one was written in like the 1960s, 70s, or 80s,
yeah,
I think, right?
Yeah, but it was still good. And then the documentaries, of course, like Vaxxed 1, 2, and 3, 1986, The Act. And then there was, there's more. There's so much out there. That's the thing. Like there's just so much, and it just takes a little bit of time. But I think that's another part of this programming, right? They keep us so busy, and just this messaging of like, well, trust the experts. They've done it. They know. They've been through it. So it takes away the responsibility and the work for us to do, and we're just told to hand over all responsibility, and that's okay and accepted, right? Well, that's what they tell us to think,
right? Mm-hmm. I want to hear from you regarding the health differences, if it's relevant, of your children who have received vaccines versus those who haven't. Did you notice any distinct health differences in them?
No, to be honest.
Yeah.
I stopped my oldest at 18 months, but I was also like heavily into the nutrition program at that point. So, like bone marrow and bone broth and, Weston A. Price, like kind of diet. So I always wonder if that had a big piece to do with it. And then our ability to, and then just trusting the body and doing natural things to support symptoms and not suppress them. So, my children, I say it's not luck. It's not. It's intentional.
It's not.
Are very healthy.
Well, and this brings up a good point too, because there seems to be sentiments both on the pro-vaccine side of things and also coming from some anti-vaxxers where people tend to think in very black and white ways, where they think that vaccines are the only thing that are problematic. Like you even see it amongst much of the MAHA crowd, which I don't typically identify with, where there's like, I guess, infighting happening amongst the MAHA crowd, where some of them that are more focused on the vaccine issue are pissed off about the food related topics that are being covered and the agricultural related topics and the fluoride in the water and stuff like that. And they're like, all that is pales in comparison to the importance of vaccines. And then on the pro-vaccine side of things, I think people tend to think that, for example, the claim vaccines cause autism. I think most of us are saying we think vaccines are one of the many things that lead to neurological issues and lead to autism. It's not solely vaccines. We're not saying that. I think that'd be ridiculous to say that. So this is like a perfect example of that point, though, that first off, the human body is incredibly resilient, incredibly intelligent, self-healing. And even if you did vaccinate your kids, that doesn't mean that they're going to have way worse health outcomes, especially if you're doing all the other things to maintain health, to help them trust their body and things like this. Whatever they received via injection, they can detoxify from.
Absolutely. Yeah, I fully believe that when our bodies are given the right tools, the right environment, and just even the mindset, like we forget how powerful the mind is, and what we think and believe, becomes true. But it doesn't have to be black or white. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but just my kids, I guess, are kind of that living proof of just it is all the things coming together. Yeah, and to not get like with my son, do I wish I didn't vaccinate him? Absolutely. But, I'm not worried about him. He's healthy and fine and moving forward. And now he has information that he can take forward into his life and hopefully go from there.
I know vaccines are also a gateway when you start looking into the other childhood interventions, especially surrounding birth. And I want to get to that in a little bit. I have a few more questions relating to nurses specifically and vaccines and this whole paradigm. So I think the people who think along the lines that I'm about to say here are becoming less and less frequent. Like I'm coming across them less and less. But I do remember getting messages from nurses and doctors at the beginning of 2020 and then in 2021, 2022, thanking me for what I was saying, but they themselves would admit that they were not going to speak out. They were like, I can't because I'll lose my job. I'll do this, I'll do that. What do you say to nurses who are aware of problems with vaccines, but refuse to speak out and continue to administer vaccines despite being aware of problems with them?
Oh, that's a little bit of a sore topic for me, but it's their soul contract. Someone once said, and it was at the end of the day, you and no one else are going to bed with your soul. And can you live with that? Can you do that when you had an opportunity to make a change and you didn't? That's something that you're going to have to reconcile with. I know that once I learned the information I did, there was no way I could continue doing something that I knew was not right and harmful. So, and I think the more, and we came across this in 2020, there was only really 3 of us very vocal in Canada, lots of silent support.
So you had a lot of nurses that would message you sort of behind the scenes, like
had a whole silent army.
See, that's so frustrating.
Oh, that's why I said it's a sore spot for me. Yeah. Because it keeps saying, like, if there's enough that are actually bringing this information forward, imagine the change that we could make. Imagine the difference we can make. We say we want to help and heal and, impact lives. Well, imagine being the one that can actually start facilitating this change in one child's life or an individual's life, or maybe it's going to change the course of what we do. But if more people start bringing this to awareness, like, isn't that the impact that we actually want? Isn't that the whole idea of going into this industry is to help? Well, it starts there.
Yeah. It really frustrates me too. I can't even imagine from your perspective, like having been a nurse, having had the balls, so to speak, to speak out and share your perspective authentically despite all that you've gone through. And I want to get into that as well, because you're still going through some stuff related to your bravery. And what's so frustrating is questioning, had those who are giving you silent support behind the scenes been willing to speak out, of course, like it would have helped change this paradigm. Possibly it would definitely sort of tip the scale that way, but I don't know that you'd be going through what you're going through right now if more nurses took the same stance as you and were willing to speak out. And then on the flip side, it's like, because they've made an example of you, or they're making an example of you, it makes it so nurses are now scared to speak out. It's such a frustrating conundrum, but the solution to that is if people were just in integrity and chose to do the harder right instead of the easier wrong.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that I learned at West Point, and all conversations aside surrounding the indoctrination there in the military. But one of the things that I learned that's in the cadet prayer is always make us do the harder right over the easier wrong, and never settle for a half truth when the whole truth can be one.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
Right. And man, it's just like we completely underestimate the power that we have as both individuals, but more importantly, a collective of individuals to stand and be brave and do the right thing. Like, that applies across so many areas, especially when it comes to so-called authority figures and things like this. Like, all it would take is a bunch of people doing something brave and standing on their morals and just saying, no, I'm not doing that. You don't have to be, overly aggressive. You don't have to lash out. It's just setting firm boundaries and saying, no, that's it. I'm not going to do this anymore. How many nurses would you say have messaged you behind the scenes and are like not speaking out themselves? Which would indicate that they agree with you.
Yeah, because I'm sure it'll get into that, but because we formed Canadian Frontline Nurses. We were, an organization across Canada. So there was, I don't know, hundreds, thousand. There was a lot across Canada. But then even from the globe, we had people messaging us, from Sweden, from Australia, from everywhere. So they knew. And it's okay. That's a thing too, because I have to remember my own journey, and everyone's placed in this, path for different times, different reasons. But so that's another piece of just forget. I don't even know if forgiveness is the word, but just the soul contracts. It's everyone's timing is in this place, and it all kind of like unfolds the way it's needed to. Because at the same time, like we were also aware. I think of people that knew what was going on 20 years ago. Even 10 years, 30 more, 40, right? How frustrated were they must have been like with us, like, why aren't you like knowing this yet? And so I think things have to unfold at its own time to help the collective get there. Like I was still blessed that my, kind of awakening, whatever you want to call it, started in 2015. I couldn't imagine trying to learn all this information at once. Like it's a lot. So, it's all going to unfold the way it needs to, but I am going to be frustrated in the process. Like many of us, if I'm going to be honest, like I want to, I want to be the, a good person, but it was very frustrating. It was very frustrating in 2020. So might as well just dive into kind of like that.
Yeah,
part
please,
of it.
let's do it.
Yeah. So 2018, I mentioned, is when I really kind of started understanding about vaccines and the harm it was causing to children, and just that it was unnecessary. Is really was what I came to the conclusion is just not even the harms. It's just unnecessary. They don't need it in their bodies. And so I started speaking out about this quite boldly then. And so I was brought into my regulatory body at that time for discipline, because I had been reported by many individuals for sharing what I was doing on social media and whatever else. And at that time, I did feel alone, and I wasn't ready to lose, the career, the paycheck, all the things. And it's really interesting because even after that, like my second son, I was like, I swore I would never go back to nursing. I was like, that's it. After my maternity leave, I'm not returning, but I did. I think I needed to, but I was already in trouble with my college then, and I took the slap on the wrist. You're right. I'm kind of wrong. However, I said it to not really say I was wrong, but to appease them enough.
Right.
I won't do it again. But that was 2019 by the time all that wrapped up. And I walked out of that meeting and I said to my union rep, and I said, but if they ever come after the children or try to mandate anything, there's nothing that's going to stop me from speaking up. And it was kind of like a cruel joke.
Real quick, like, were you kind of telling parents on the side that you would come across like, hey, there's more to this than you've been fed? I
was trying to be very careful of how I said things at work.
Yeah.
And I was actually not really saying things in the workplace, because I knew that I couldn't, or, or maybe I would suggest, a holistic option of a food or a cream or something, just kind of like slowly dripping things. But I didn't overtly come out and talk about vaccines in the workplace, but I was sharing all over Facebook, social media, wherever I could, or in private conversations outside of work.
So people definitely knew what your position was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real quick, one more thing on that.
Yeah.
Did you convert any of your colleagues? Not that like your job is to convert, but were any of your colleagues, nurses at that time, receptive to the information you were coming across?
No. God. No. There was.
So you're like by yourself.
There was one in there that was she kind of guided me. So at the time I wasn't ready to listen to what she had to say. And then there came a moment where I was like, okay, I'm ready to hear. So there was someone already aware.
On the same page. Okay.
Yes. And then there was another nurse and we were kind of coming to this conclusion at the same time as well. But otherwise, no.
At least you had them though.
Yes.
Yeah. So like my heart goes out to the people who are literally like by themselves, and whether they're in a unit in the army or whether they're working at a hospital, like that's hard. That's really hard.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And especially when you can see the bullying online, not my name mentioned, but where it's going, or at the workplace. And when I left that disciplinary meeting, like I said, it was 2019. And I said, if they ever come after us, nothing's going to stop me. But I just didn't expect it to be so soon, because then 2020 rolled around, right? Like this is, I was like, shit.
Right.
now I got to like stand by what I said. So it was really interesting because as nurses, we had fought for years to not wear the mask during, so-called flu season. So we would have to wear this mask from November to April if we did not get the flu shot.
Oh my God.
And so we fought for years, and we won in 2018. And I was like, and I was on maternity leave. So I was like, thankfully, like when I come back to work, I'm not going to have to wear this like stupid mask. They found that it was discriminatory, and it did not stop transmission. Like they proved this. And then here we are, 2020, and all these nurses are just slapping the mask back on their face. And I was like, but you just fought for this. Like, we fought for this and we won. Like, what are you doing? And I'd bring this up to our union, who again, fought for this decision. But this is different. This is different. We don't know what this is. This is new. It's still like, even if you believe in viruses or whatever, it's still the same size if you do believe in it. So that was
they don't work based on that paradigm is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah. Regardless, a virus or whatever, but they proved it did not stop transmission. Right. So why is this any different? Well, it's new. We don't know. But that was wild to me to watch these people just revert backwards. And so, yeah, it was really hard to stay quiet with the masks, with the isolation, the school closures. I had way too many parents messaging me about how their kids were hating life. They didn't know what to do. 6-year-olds talking about pretending, slice their wrists. And, I had my own young children and everything going on. And it's like, I can't sit back idly and let this go on. It was like beyond me. Like, it was like one of those things that you didn't feel like you had control of. And when I first started speaking out, all I was doing was trying to combat the fear, because they're just telling us all these things, not to do, or, put on the mask, this and all this, wash everything down in your kitchen, like crazy stuff. And so I was like, okay, to boost your immune system, these are some things you can do, talking about vitamins or just, health related things that, I learned about in school.
Right.
So I came at it at that sense at the beginning. Mm-hmm.
Hey y'all, I'm here with Melissa Kupsch from Remedy Academy of Homeopathy. We are so stoked here at the Way Forward to be partnering with Melissa and Remedy in order to spread the message of homeopathy across the world, and also to partner on the eventual development of healing centers across the United States.
People are pretty quickly coming to realize that frequency is the future of medicine. We are witnessing the great resurgence of homeopathy right now. We're really moving away from that suppressive medical model. Whether it's for eczema, asthma, hormones, fertility, anxiety, depression, trauma, whatever it is, it all starts as energy in the person's field first. If we change our field, we can completely change our life. Our 2-year academy is open worldwide to anyone who wants to become a homeopath. We've got 5 lecturers and we currently have over 500 students enrolled, which is record numbers in our field. A career in homeopathy is amazing for anyone who wants flexibility in their work and who wants to be valuable in creating this new world. We have stay-at-home parents enrolled. We have ex-medical professionals, grandparents signed up who want to learn how to heal their grandchildren and pass on that invaluable knowledge. We even have husband and wife teams. So my husband enrolled in the course with no prior knowledge of health as a background, and he is loving it.
Kylie is also enrolled as well. So my partner is, and she's so stoked to become a homeopath and to be helping to spread this message across the world.
The thing that we hear from so many of our students is, I found my thing. Homeopathy is the key. We harness frequencies from nature and we alter the field of all creations. So if anybody wants to join us or they want to know more about it, they can visit our website.
Yeah, and all that information will be in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about Remedy Academy, also RMDY Collective, also some of the homeopathic products that they have, please just head to the show notes. All of that will be listed there. Most healthcare today operates on an outdated mechanistic model, treating the body like a battlefield rather than a self-healing system. You wait months for an appointment only to receive a rush diagnosis that labels you rather than truly understanding your unique health. Even in holistic health, many practitioners rely on endless lab tests and supplement protocols, addressing symptoms instead of the root cause. And the result? Another prescription or supplement regimen that merely suppresses or masks symptoms rather than facilitating true healing, whether the imbalance was physical, emotional, energetic, or a mix of all three. And that's why Dr. Tom Cowan co-founded the New Biology Clinic, to offer something radically different. As one of the most respected natural health doctors in the world, Dr. Cowan has spent decades challenging conventional medicine and advancing a deeper understanding of human biology, water, and natural health. His work isn't just about rejecting the mainstream, it's about offering a more truthful, biologically coherent approach for healing. The New Biology Clinic recognizes that health isn't about fighting disease, it's about restoring balance. You're not a diagnosis, you're an individual with a unique story, and healing should honor that. With virtual consultations available worldwide, The clinic offers a flat rate monthly membership that gives you direct access to practitioners who take the time to actually listen. Members also get exclusive health live streams, a resource library, and live sessions covering everything from biofield tuning and breathwork to movement and meditation, all designed to support whole body healing. And if you're not ready for a membership, you can book a one-time appointment, sign up for an enrichment-only membership for the healing modalities alone, or schedule a free connection session with one of the care team members to see how the New Biology Clinic can help in your specific situation. This isn't about keeping you dependent on doctors. It's about making you sovereign over your health. Head to newbiologyclinic.com and use code THEWAYFORWARD, and that's spelled The Way, FORWARD, for $50 off account activation, or just head to the show notes for more info. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com for $150 off. Your body already knows how to heal, and New Biology Clinic helps you remember. Yeah, one quick thing on the masking piece, that even if you're coming from the perspective that there are these boogeyman particles floating about, this was always a huge contradiction to me. They say the reason masks work is because, yes, although the holes, the perforations in masks are too large and viruses pass through them, ultimately viruses are traveling on droplets of snot or a cough, like on mucus essentially, right? And that's why they don't pass through. But then they also claim that viruses can survive on a surface for upwards of 2 to 5, sometimes 7 days or beyond. So what happens when that fluid that the virus is traveling on and lands on the mask dries out? That virus is still going to be sitting on the mask. And then when you're inhaling, you're pulling air in through those holes through the mask. Are you not inhaling those virus particles then? And again, all of that is nonsense, and we can get to that. But you see what I mean? Like that makes zero sense. Zero sense.
Yeah. All of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yes.
Okay, please continue on with your story though.
It is. It's so crazy sometimes to think back of all the nonsense that went on. It's like, is this actually real life happening? But it was, and here we are. But it was interesting because, from unraveling about vaccines and everything else, and we mentioned some of the books, it led me to understanding that contagion is myth and viruses don't exist. And so I was kind of on this cusp starting in 2019. So when they started and I knew that the goal was to kind of like mandate injections on adults. I didn't know how they were going to do that. And I didn't know at that time the whole nefarious agendas. I just knew the kind of the vaccine route and what they wanted to do. And so when they started talking about this virus in Wuhan in 2019, and I had become aware of Zach Bush, and what he was talking about, what was going on there, I was like, oh, this is how they're going to do it. This is how they're going to get us. So I was already calling like BS, like back, it was like December of 2019. And then watching, colleagues not having, any fear, and some of them being like, yeah, that's nonsense, until the real push came, in New York, the epicenter and everything else. And then it rolled into, March, and then the whole world had to get shut down just for, 2 weeks. And here I am just being like you said it was BS. And now you're here, and I'm watching things in the unit take place where our respiratory therapists, again, we take care of babies. They were told they're going to have to go on standby to go down to work in the adult ICU because they're going to need an overflow. Then we watched an entire gynecology wing get closed down for overflow patients. And we're making all these rules and all these things happening, and nothing happened. Those respiratory therapists never had to be sent down. That entire gynecology wing, think of all those appointments, surgeries, whatever needed. I mean, maybe that was a blessing in itself for some, I don't know, but maybe it was, not, ended in harm. But that whole unit closed down, never once filled a bed. And so I'm watching this, and I'm thinking, is no one else paying attention? Like, how are you not seeing that nothing is happening, but you're still living in so much fear because the TV's telling you to? And I remember a couple times being in the break room, and, they have CNN on and whatever else they're playing. And and just fear. And at one point I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I was like, this is just BS. Yeah. Then
You said that out loud?
Oh yeah. My inner voice came out, and yeah, colleagues at that point were like, okay, then they knew where I stood. So this is where you talked about being isolated in the workplace, and that bullying I did. I was fully alone at this point.
Yeah, God.
And I came in to work. I did what I needed to do, took care of those babies and families, but I would sit in the back. And then it continued, as we know. November 2020 came along, and I'm speaking out as much as I can, using my social media or whatever I had at that time, and just trying again to dismantle the fear. I was going to some rallies that were happening and coming into work, and I just remember like my soul was just dying in there. And I was like, I didn't know what to do. I remember getting called out by one RT in the middle of the unit. I worked night shifts, and because she knew I was at a rally a couple days before, and I came back to work. I'm wearing the mask. I'm doing the things, goggles.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and they were so scared of me. They were so scared of me because I was living my life normally outside of those walls. And
was the hospital you were working at a pretty busy hospital?
Yeah, it was a teaching hospital. It's massive. Yeah.
Okay, and it's in a densely populated area, relatively speaking. I know Canada, you guys are like, your population is much smaller, but a densely populated area. Okay, that's an important point, because regarding like shutting down certain wings, like flooding more people to be able to take on emergency patients and things like this, prepping for that, and then nothing happening.
The ER was the slowest it's ever been. The ICU was the slowest it's ever been.
It's so wild, because even in the so-called epicenter New York, back when I put on the series that I produced, The End of COVID, I interviewed 3 nurses from 3 different densely populated areas, one of which was working at a hospital that was in the so-called epicenter in New York City. And all 3 of them said the exact same thing, that there was like nothing new happening. Maybe there was some upticks a few months later, probably after the perpetual fear had set in amongst the masses of people. But overwhelmingly, for that month and that period where the virus was allegedly virulent and spreading and causing this widespread disease and death, there was nothing new happening in all 3 of these different hospitals, coming from 3 different nurses, right? And they then also relayed that I think all 3 of them were still working at their respective hospitals at this time. After the rollout of the shots, that's when they saw an uptick in emergency room visits.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was just wild to see. And I was like, is no one paying attention? But they just, like, that whole cognitive dissonance, right? When you have so much fear, your logical brain shuts off and you can't actually think. Because I'm like, how are you not seeing this? Like, nothing is happening. And it was really sad because, a lot of people would talk about the adult areas, but working in neonatal intensive care unit, we were really harming those families, because mom, if she came in, dad wasn't really allowed to come in to the labor room until she was like fully laboring. Would have to wear a mask during labor. Then they were threatened, if you don't test your baby, or if you don't get tested, with the nonsense PCR, then if your baby gets taken to the NICU, you won't be able to come see them. One visitor at a time. I remember that being so hard. You have this micro-prem baby in the unit, and you're alone dealing with that grief and the scariness, like getting all this information, and you don't have your partner beside you to take it in and to support. Some of them would have to like trade off if they have other kids, so just it was so awful to see. And then if they're on antenatal, so if there was, risks while they were pregnant, they could be there for like weeks, sometimes like a month or more pre-birth, and only one visitor. So sometimes they would go without seeing their kids, go without seeing a partner, whatever that was. I remember this one really bothered me for C-sections. The partner, the father, was not allowed to come into the OR room. There'd be like 8 medical people, but that one, person, support person was not allowed in that room. Like, it was just absurd. And so they're this, the woman not being able to be supported by a loved one, the room full of everyone else, and he's missing out on this. And then if she had to be, put under, sometimes that happens, like general anesthetic, then like they both miss the birth of their baby. And we would usually go into the room, into the OR, and the baby would be handed to us as NICU nurses. And we take the baby back and, love it, and, dry it up, wrap it, and give baby to dad to take back to mom. And we were not allowed to cross that little line in the OR room. So they would get the baby, place the baby on a cot, and literally push the cot out the door to us, where we could then pick up the baby. And then and then they were telling us, like, if mom tested positive, then we don't know what the baby's going to be. So if the baby needs help, we first have to get the baby, put it into this isolate, this house dome, take it to another room, get all our, personal gear on, and then we can start taking care of the baby. This could be a microprem. Like they need like time, but it was, luckily thank God I was never part of anything that had to do with that baby, because I just would wanted to like just care right away. Mm-hmm. But I just remember thinking, like, you guys are all okay with this? Like, you think this is right and normal? Like, it was a time.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, it's insane. Was that, we'll get to this later, but was that the sort of impetus for reclaiming birth? Because I'm sure at this point you were already exploring and reconciling with your friend who was doing home births, like, oh, okay, you're right. But was that part of the reason that inspired you to do?
It was getting close to it.
Okay. We'll get to that next, because I want to get to the point in this story where you are now still currently being prosecuted for your bravery.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I couldn't take it anymore. I was suspended from work because my colleagues were scared of me. They put in all these reports that, I'd pull my mask down below my nose when I was sitting alone. When I was sitting alone at a computer doing my reporting, I'd put my goggles on my head because, God forbid, you never know what's going to come out of my eyes. So lots of reports. So I was suspended from work, and I was like, I just can't. Like, I was even like before that calling in sick to shifts because I just could not take the toxicity and what was happening there. So I was suspended. And me and a friend were like, okay, enough of being, keyboard warriors. That's what I felt like. It's time to do something. I had already spoken out at City Hall in September about the harm of masks on children. And then that following November, we're still like in 2020 here, we hosted a freedom rally in my hometown. And I knew at that point I was ending my career. I knew by doing that, like, that was it. And that was a decision I made, and it was okay. But what I was not ready for, and what I was still naive to, was the media. So that was my first experience with, the propaganda and that the media and the harms they could do. And so hosting that first freedom rally in my hometown was the largest one we had yet. In November of 2020, there was probably 200 people. That was a lot at the time.
It's a lot for Canada.
Yeah, and we were so proud of ourselves. And then the next morning, LHSC nurse Kristen Nagle in hot water for hosting that event. And then the entire article went on to talk about how reckless I was, how I was endangering premature babies, putting their lives at risk. You can just imagine the defamation that came out of that article. And overnight, my character was destroyed. It really affected my family, people that I thought I was friends with, because it was all over social media. I could read everyone's comments, see what they were saying. The hospital had to hire extra staff at the desk. They were like looking at lawsuits, parents, well, she was taking care of my baby. And,
oh my goodness.
It was, it was something. And it was, I got to read at that point. Then I was placed under investigation by my College of Nurses. I was sent a 600-page disclosure of all the things I had said and done on social media. I got to read all the reports that were sent in for me from colleagues, random strangers, businesses that I had loved and supported. And then there was, a really close family member that wrote one in about me.
No way.
And I just remember in that point, I was really broken. That was the hardest thing at that time.
Do you look back on that now? This may be a loaded question, and maybe a nuanced question, and maybe like there's a spectrum and it's a yes and no, with gratitude. And the reason I'm asking that is because you come across so sure of yourself, so convicted in what you're doing in the best way, like truly. And you sort of exude a level of, at this point, I don't care what people think about me because I know what I'm doing. I'm right with God. I feel an integrity and I know this is the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. Shouldn't say greatest, but the biggest blessing, as I want to say. It was not in that moment. I was shattered. I still remember just actually collapsing to the floor and just sobbing. I've never cried before for days, weeks. But I remember at that point, I had nothing left. I wasn't really a believer at that time, but I remember just thinking like, I had lost family, the friends, career, like it was out there for the public to see. And I was like, now what? And it was, get up. You have to get up. Otherwise it will be all for nothing. And so that was my kind of, coming to Jesus moment for me. He picked me up, put the pieces back together, gave me the armor of God. And he's like, yeah, you got to keep going. Otherwise it's all for nothing. And so I did. And so in that moment, I found another nurse speaking out in Toronto, Sarah Shajunian, messaged Nicole Saratek, and she was speaking out, Nurse Erin from New York. And we ended up forming, they had a few other contacts, and we ended up forming Global Frontline Nurses. And we're like, we got to get this information out. And so we banded together, and we ended up going to Washington, D.C., January 6th, 2021, to speak on a health and freedom stage with Mickey Willis, Del Bigtree, David Martin. It was so incredible. It was so incredible to be there and connected with other nurses in different areas of the industry of healthcare all across, we had 2 of us from Canada all across the States, and all sharing the same thing, just wanting to bring awareness. And our naive little minds were like, we're going to get this out and everyone's going to hear it. And all these people are here to listen. We were the first one to go on at 10, which is fine. It was a small group, but I don't follow politics. I had no idea what was going on at that time.
You're just there for a health thing.
I was just there to just speak truth.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
How validating was that though? Just to be
It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. It was incredible. Especially, okay, we're not alone.
Yeah.
Like, look at all these others. Look at what they've been through and look what they continue to do. It not only validating, but the courage, seeing others' bravery, like it's inspiring, right? And you're like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And and so we did. But it was interesting because when we flew home, Sarah and I, we were deemed domestic terrorists.
Literally.
Yes.
Like quite literally on an official government thing, deemed domestic terrorist.
Yeah, I was on the American watch list for a bit.
No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is insane, especially like in hindsight, or even at that time, but especially now in hindsight, as a lot of the people who were super pro mainstream narrative, following all the guidelines, demeaning people like you have now sort of softened and at least realized like, yeah, that was a little bit over the top. Like that is insane, especially in hindsight, that all that happened to you.
Yes. It was, and that was another kind of almost breaking moment. We had the equivalent to the FBI, the RCMP was at our house. What was your involvement in rioting and storming of the Capitol? I think there's at least like 4 nursing schools still teaching about us, with like even Kristen Nagle, what
like
not
as a
to
bad
do.
example?
Yes,
oh
yes,
my God,
yes, but
dude.
what not to do, and ethics and all the things like you might want to rethink before you go storming a Capitol. I have a couple recordings of students that supported like what I was doing, and they were in class and recorded this. But yeah, it was we and all knew this went international. This was, my other media was, kind of more local Canadian, but this went international. And we were blasted everywhere. And the death threats, the hate and all these things I'm not used to just coming from everywhere. And that was a really dark moment. But what was really cool, we realized after that, was once the hate went by, because you kind of come to realize that they have their moment of, fame, getting their point across, and then they move on to the next thing.
Totally. They're going to find the next thing to be outraged
angry about. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So that is short-lived, but what happened from that was this wave of support and love, because now people knew they weren't crazy. They weren't alone in thinking what they were thinking. They saw nurses speaking out and doing something, and they're like, thank you. So then this wave of love and support kept going, and then it was like, or kept coming in, and we're like, okay, now we have to keep going. And so we, in Canada, formed Canadian Frontline Nurses, and we took the message across Canada, spoke out wherever we could. September of 2021, we ended up hosting the first national hospital rally across the entire country. So this was when they were implementing jabs or jobs, and we wanted to take a stand with the nurses. And so all across Canada, we had this like beautiful domino of events at the exact same time, all across in major cities, nurses coming out, and it was huge.
That's so epic.
It was huge.
That's so epic. How many nurses did you see come on board at that time? Just like seeing other people be so bold and stand up, I'm sure that had an effect on those who were sort of sitting the fence, who were too scared in their respective situations.
Yeah. I don't know if it reached into thousands or hundreds. I don't know. I did a bad job. There was just a lot. Like at those events, like some of them, like I remember Vancouver, BC, they had almost 10,000 people show up in support, whether it was, not all healthcare, but it was a lot. But it was really interesting because that was the next media campaign. And we realized that the media for a while was doing us a favor by discrediting us because it was showing people where to find us.
Yeah, like Streisand effect.
And they kind of caught on to that. So then they stopped sharing about us. And we were kind of disappointed. We're like, don't you want to cover this? So they didn't. But then they didn't realize how big the hospital event was going to be. So the media wasn't prepared. So they had to come up with another story. And the same story all across Canada was that we attacked healthcare workers. We impeded with ambulance access. And we interfered with cancer treatments. Those 3 specific things. Same message all across Canada. And I thought the first one was really bad with the hate, but this one was interesting because even people in so-called freedom were like, why would you do that? Because the messaging was so powerful that we put people's lives in danger. Meanwhile, we had interacted with the officers, like police in each area. We were off hospital property, just near. Like we made sure that everything was done properly, so we would not have any of these issues. But yeah, that one was a lot. This is kind of when we were getting a little burnt out, I would say. It's probably, yeah.
Yeah. So where has it evolved into now with like what you're doing both with those organizations or what you're doing in your activism and raising awareness to this and medical freedom and things like this, and also with them prosecuting you?
Yeah.
So that's a 2-part question.
Yeah. So it's really, after that, we were kind of like, okay, we need a break. We're kind of done for a bit. And then the trucker showed up. I won't get too much into that, but in Canada, it was a really, really big deal. Have the streets lined with hundreds of trucks and people coming out from everywhere. And I ended up spending 4 weeks in Ottawa at the capital, just filming what was going on. And it just felt like finally, like it was like, okay, we're not alone, even though we knew we weren't. There's all these people support, but just something like this huge, literally like trucks like coming. So that was pretty epic. And it ended in 2 violent days. And I was there face to face with the officers and the violence and what was happening, filming it all. But I remember the biggest lesson coming from that was, we would always say, this is the happiest place on earth. There was so much love. There was so much community. It didn't matter your background, your race, your religion, or this. It didn't matter. We all came together as a collective for one purpose in mind. And whatever obstacle they threw at us, we were like, okay, well, we can overcome this. We weren't scared because we had the numbers. We weren't alone. And we're like, it doesn't matter. Come at us. We're going to figure this out. The infamous jerry cans. They tried to arrest people or fine people for carrying gas to the trucks. I'm like, okay, well, you can't find everybody. So then they would just hand out hundreds of like jerry cans, like gas tanks to everyone. Everyone would just walk around. Some people would use it as like their water bottle, as like
just to have it on,
like these empty containers do something. And so for me, it was like, this is the solution forward now. Is we were going. It's great to get big and get the awareness out, but now we have to come inward because now we can see what strong communities can do. So now that everyone that was, there in the convoy in that moment, now we felt it. And now we all have the responsibility to take it back into our own hometowns. And I always say it's hearts, homes, and hands. So first you have to change your own heart. Then you have to change like your home. And then you can get it in the hands of the community around you. But it first starts with you. So that's after the convoy. That's where I came back. No, I was like, no longer am I fighting for freedom. I'm creating freedom. And it begins with us.
I love that so much. So much. Because I was watching the Canadian trucker convoy from afar, obviously, right? Like I wasn't there. But what hit me instantly in watching it, I was like, yes, this is an incredible display of unity. It is so cool seeing how many people are willing to come together for this. And all it requires is that you look to your left and your right and like, oh, other people are noticing something's wrong. Okay, I can trust my own intuition. Something's wrong here, so I'm going to go join them. That's all that it requires, is enough individuals bravely standing up and speaking out and living authentically. And then there's a piece of me watching the Canadian trucker rally. I was like, if those same people, how many people were involved in total? Like estimates were like millions, right? Or like hundreds of thousands at least.
Yeah.
Something insane, like insane
yeah.
number relative to Canada's population, like a good chunk,
Yes.
right? And I just remember thinking, like, if those same people banded together in their own communities, irrespective of what's going on, you don't even have to go out and do this rally, like this display, this outward display, and this also protest of, we don't like that you have power over us. It's like, no, turn that around. Like, oh, look how many of us there are.
Yes.
There's only a few of them so-called authority figures. What if we just stopped listening to them?
Said no.
And said no. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm like,
that's
in our own communities. I think I put out posts on social media commenting on the trucker convoy saying that exact thing, like, oh, this is incredible. And those same amounts of people could just go back to their homes and in their communities be like, yeah, we're not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's over. There's nothing they can do. There's literally nothing that they can do.
It really is that simple. And I'm so thankful for, the convoy, the truckers, and everyone that came together, because it taught us that lesson. And it also showed us that we don't have to come to their level, because, oh my gosh, did they ever try, like the rubber bullets, the tear gas, the violence. They tried to provoke us to incite violence against them as well, to give them a reason for doing what they're doing. And we never did. So it also showed, I kept saying, this is Care Bear stare, just get Care Bear stare, just stand back and let it go, like the heart, like love always wins. And, it can sound cliche, but it's true. And we didn't come down to their level. And it's like, okay, like we have to take all these lessons and bring it back. And so from that moment, that was February 2022. And then that's what I've been focusing on. Then, we were blessed to then, this comes back to birth. This is how it all ties in, to become pregnant with, our now baby girl. Didn't know we were having a girl, but it was after that of like, yeah, I'm not fighting for freedom. I'm creating a new way forward for, my kids, for my future. And I'm literally creating life inside me now. And this is the energy that I want to go, because that fighting, even, as noble as it is, it's that negative, it's just negative emotions of like fighting against something, when you can just take that energy and create new. It's like, I don't want my kids to be part of any of these institutions. So why am I trying to fight against them? Why am I asking, like you said, for permission, when I can just go do something different?
Right.
And so, I backed away. So we dissolved Canadian Frontline Nurses. It was time. And I moved away from the, so-called like freedom movement, just because I needed to start, like I said, hearts, hands, and homes, and start creating this future for my family. And plus I needed to protect the space I was in now, which was, pregnant, and I was doing things completely different, because she was, I call her now my redemption birth. And I was like, I'm not allowing anyone's energy in to disrupt what we are doing in creating here. And so I really wanted to create that peace. And yeah, it was like all the messages, everything I had been talking about the last few years finally was like in that moment of not handing over responsibility, trusting our bodies, coming inward, surrendering to our like divine design, how we were created. And it was like, okay, all these things that I've been saying, now I actually have to like do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that so much. That's incredible, because it honestly it parallels well to my journey too. Health Freedom for Humanity dissolving. I won't get into that. I covered that in the first episode of this podcast, the episode 1 of The Way Forward, if you want more info on that. But it was very serendipitous in terms of timing, because I was coming to a point where I no longer wanted to like fight for freedom or try to fight within the constructs and confines of these institutions, or a better way, in those institutions. They're corrupt to the core. They're on flawed premises. They have no business existing, and I'm only perpetuating them by continuing to fight them or try to initiate change from inside them. Don't get me wrong, it's still incredible that there are people like helping to wake up within the system, but I just knew that this is no longer my role anymore. I'm going to show a new way of being, showcase the way forward for mankind. Like that's my role. That's what I feel good with now, is that like, I don't even want any involvement with that paradigm anymore. Yeah. I want to take my efforts and start helping to initiate, inspire, having conversations around something new.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was really cool because you were a big part in my journey from 2020 and beyond, watching you, but it was cool to see others shift as well into this next way that we need to start working towards. And I think it's really, just really beautiful to see, because it's great, and thank goodness there are still people doing that, because everyone has their purpose, but we need something new to move towards. And if we don't have something new, then we don't have hope. And if there's no hope, then no one's going to stand up or do what's right. And so I was really grateful to see more kind of shifting in that direction.
It's incredible. There's a recent poll that I put out on all my social media channels, and 95% of people responded that they're struggling to find their health and freedom community in person. And don't get me wrong, these platforms, these devices that you're listening to or watching this podcast on right now are great for helping to disseminate information, helping us, find like-minded people to validate us, but they are not a replacement for real in-person community. At the core of our new community platform is a powerful, easy-to-use map helping you to instantly connect with like-hearted, like-minded community, including men and women, farms, schools, practitioners of all types, and other businesses near you. The platform also includes groups, social functions, messaging, and Platinum members also get access to our content library with footage from all of our in-person and virtual events like Confluence and the end of COVID, as well as breathwork sessions, Qigong sessions, member Q&As, and also member community calls. So if you'd like to support this podcast and support our mission of helping people to connect hyper-locally in person, and also obviously support yourself in the process, go to the show notes or just go to thewayforward.com/join. And again, the way forward is spelled thewayforward.com/join to become a member today. Help us build the way forward for mankind.
It's interesting about, I thought after the Convoy that Canada was much more ahead. But this last April, we just had an election that I did not participate in. And it was really disappointing. It was so disappointing. Not because I knew the Liberals, they would vote Liberals. That's what they do. Whatever. I knew he was going to get in. But what was disappointing was how many freedom people were putting their entire stakes and their lives on trying to get Pierre, the conservative, in, thinking that he was going to be the solution to change everything. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought we were so much further ahead, but we are not. And it was really disappointing.
Yeah. I share a lot of the same sentiments, and I recorded a solo cast on this recently that I think, whether intentional or not, and we can speculate all day, that's sort of the role that Trump initially, and then a lot of people started waking up that, okay, Trump is clearly not the solution, especially now with this whole Epstein thing and everything like that. And then the Iran-Israel situation, and then funding Ukraine again, all the stuff, right? But then I think RFK coming onto Trump's team made it so a lot of the people who are interested in forming parallel structures and no longer supporting that paradigm and beginning to look at solutions outside of it, we're now pacified and right back into supporting that paradigm, putting more energy into that and less energy into dissolving the illusion of authority and forming those parallel structures. And it was really frustrating to see because, I'll say this in full transparency, we worked 3 years on our platform to help people connect with their local community. We've worked for 3 years on that, and had this platform launched, I think 2 years ago, it would have exploded in terms of engagement. We're getting good engagement. We have 1,700 members and we just launched. That's amazing. But I think that there's still elements of people who have that hopium with respect to political solutions. I was saying off air to you, I actually think that's why, relative to the United States, my podcast is more popular in terms of the charts in Australia, the UK, and Canada, because even though you're saying a lot of the freedom movement in Canada was right back into the political system when it came time to vote, I would say a larger percentage of people in those three countries see through the illusion and are already on the same page, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're looking for other options here. Whereas a lot of people in the United States who are, quote, freedom oriented, and I'm no judgment, but I just see a variety of clear issues with that ideology. Even if it was as operating as it is allegedly supposed to be operating, there are some moral implications of outsourcing power to someone else, saying, I believe that you should wield the mechanism of government to enforce my beliefs onto other people. There's some conversations around that as well. I think it's fundamentally immoral. But the point is, there's still enough people in the United States that are still bought into that paradigm that are, quote, freedom oriented. So it's it's incredibly frustrating.
And it's the same in Canada too. I'll have to say, like I was mentioning, like I was so disappointed to see that, see people still outsourcing and hoping someone else will fix the problem for them. And I've realized that it's because a lot of people still don't want to take responsibility of their own lives. And you asked me, you know, earlier on about, you know, 2020, and I said it was, looking back now, was like the greatest blessing in my life, because I had mentioned after my second mat leave with my son in 2018 that I was never going to go back to nursing, but I did, because, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to make income? How are you going to do this? And I didn't know at that time. And the whole idea of I'll just figure it out wasn't acceptable then. And I didn't know how I was going to leave. And so it was kind of like, you know, God's like, you're not leaving on your own. I'm just going to obliterate this for you. So there's no turning back, but only forward. And so, you know, it brought me to faith. It brought me to homeschooling my kids. I had no plan of doing that. It brought me to redemption birth. And this whole way of just trying to figure out how to create this beautiful life for my family and I that is outside. I call it getting off the conveyor belt. We hopped off the conveyor belt, and now I'm just so thankful for that we get to live like intentionally and with purpose and build it ourselves. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's 3 threads that I want to pull on in this conversation. One is the Reclaiming Birth Summit, and I think we'll get to that next, but I still want to get to the point of the, like you being prosecuted. We haven't finished that part of the story. And then I do want to discuss from a nursing context, having worked in a NICU, how you sort of overcame some of, I would imagine, the cognitive dissonance surrounding dissolving the idea that there are these boogeyman particles floating about and that bacteria are disease causing, et cetera, et cetera. And we can maybe save that for the end. So which of the 2 would you like to go on next?
I can wrap up the prosecuting part
let's
first.
see. Okay.
Yeah, because that'll be quick. It's just really interesting. So I was under 3 investigations, one for that first rally I'd mentioned I'd thrown in my hometown, then the other one for going to Washington, Jan 6, and then for the hospital rallies that we had done. I think there was some other possible investigation with Nicole Saratek. There was a group of us. We actually had a podcast for a little bit. It was called Ask the Nurses. And I wasn't even on this one episode, but they were talking about remdesivir. And this retired lawyer clearly has a lot of time on his hands, put all this evidence against us for talking bad things about it. But I wasn't even on that show at that time. So somehow just the fact that I was associated with that podcast was enough to put us under investigation. Oh, pretty interesting.
And
so,
what were the criminal charges? Like what
professional misconduct.
Oh, okay.
So for violating whatever codes of conduct within nursing. Like when I was fired from coming back from Washington, D.C., that's when I was still suspended when I went to Washington. I came back, I was immediately terminated with cause for going against business policies. Was the reason for
Super
going against their
vague
business
too.
policies. Yes.
Yeah.
And so with the college, it was professional misconduct on 3 different accounts. Was for, I was provincially charged. I had received 11 summons for provincial offenses for speaking at various rallies, which, yeah, I ended up getting fined for quite a bit of them. But I guess you're supposed to report that to the college when you get charged. But I was like, I was already terminated. Like I didn't. Yeah. So I didn't do that. Then it was for not complying with their terms of discipline. They wanted me to take a remediation course. So basically like re-educating, re-indoctrinated myself, which I was going to have to pay out of pocket. I think it was like $3,000 for the course. Well, that's not happening.
Right.
And then they wanted you to stand in front of the disciplinary committee to get your spanking. You know, you're wrong. And I was like, none of that is happening. And so because of that, that's professional misconduct for not fulfilling their orders. And then all my social media posts, which was a lot of viruses don't exist.
Did they specifically name that too?
Oh, yes, many of them.
Oh, man, that's hilarious.
Yeah, many. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, so they think that just my social media posts alone will be a 3 to 4 day hearing for them to bring in evidence against me. But I resigned my license in 2023 for multiple reasons. One, I was never going to do anything that they asked me to do. And it was just such a toxic environment that I wanted to get away from since 2018. So resign my license. I am done. Just, you know, moving away from that whole thing. But they are prosecuting me because I broke those codes of conduct while I still had a license. And apparently they think they can still come after me, but it's like, I don't have a job. I don't have a license other than fining me, which you don't really have jurisdiction or authority to do anymore. Like there's nothing.
Yeah,
like I'm done. So that's so now like they're trying, and there was a little bit of like fear moment because, you know, the threats of up to $35,000 fines against you, pay for the years of investigation, and then pay for legal costs. But I decided, I wrote them that I am no longer continuing with this communication. I will not be showing up for hearings, and this now is over. I'm ceasing communication with you. You have no authority, jurisdiction over me, and this is it. So
Good for you.
That is my last email to them, and they tried to write back, and there's no response. So that's how I'm washing my hands of that.
Good for you. Badass. That's amazing.
See, hopefully it works out.
I'm going to pray for you. I bet it will, though, honestly. Especially like the more you stand on like that moral courage and integrity, like, damn, that's incredible.
I just don't know what else they want to take away from me. It's like, I'm done with that world.
Right.
Like, yeah, I don't think you can't hold anything over me anymore.
Speaking of that world, what redeeming qualities, if we're to, you know, imagine a new sort of way to go about, let's say, emergency care, what are some redeeming qualities of nursing from where you sit now?
Oh, yikes. It has really changed in the last while. Like when I was going to school, they really taught about just placing hands on people, like just comforting and just really caring and listening and being there. And, you know, that's our role is to add comfort, to listen, and to be a support, not just with the physical needs, but for their emotional and mental needs as well. And I think things have gone so busy and more computerized. I remember my first year working in the States, it was called a COW, computer on wheels. We had to take around to each patient, and we had so many. All we had time was do, quick assessment, here's your meds. Quick assessment, here's your meds. And then we had to chart. I remember that in the States, it was all about CYA, cover your ass. Like that's what they taught you, chart. And so they've taken away that personal relationship. So if there were any redeeming qualities, it would get back to being why we went into nursing in the first place, was just simple putting hands on people and adding that comfort and listening and being a support person, and being that to them first and foremost before all the other things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that's still so incredibly important when it comes to healing. So really being that one who's there to validate and just sit with a person with whatever they're going through.
Yeah. And then, you know, we're taught to have good assessment skills and critical thinking, but it's really interesting because they pride us on that. And that's what they teach us, to be critical thinkers, but as long as you stay in this box.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you actually use your skills to critically think, then you're reprimanded for it. Yeah. But nurses, for all the things, you know, even the ones that are still in it, they are really good at observing. They really have good assessment skills. And it's just trusting themselves to actually think past the box. And I wish and hope if more do, then we'll see a huge change of events.
Would you say that some of the emergency related medical training possibly as well redeeming?
Oh yeah, sorry. If we're going there, absolutely. You know what? Thank goodness for emergency care, acute care. Yeah. Like I had to use it for both my sons, stitches, broken arm, all the things. And thank goodness, I will always say that. Thank goodness for emergency acute care. That is absolutely what it is there for. That is a huge blessing, and absolutely. Sorry, I didn't know where you're going with that. But
no, that's fine.
But yes, I am so thankful for emergency care when needed.
Yeah.
But anything else?
But anything else outside? Anything else outside of what we just covered there?
It's no.
Right. So basically, like the whole. I've said the same thing, that all formal schooling regarding health with respect to allopathic medicine, and really at this point, a lot of the so-called holistic forms of schooling or more alternative forms of schooling are all operating on a variety of flawed premises regarding health. So if it were up to me and I had that power, I'd be like, yeah, we need to do away with all of them and go back to the drawing board. Would you say the same with respect to nursing?
I'm really disappointed in the holistic community as well.
Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, it's almost worse.
Yeah.
In the sense because people are like, okay, we know that, these drugs and this is bad, but we'll replace that with something natural. So you're still seeking a remedy. You're still seeking something else. And, the biohacks and all these things to fix. You fix something that's broken, or you think you're broken. You want to fix yourself. Your body's against you. It's still operating these principles that there's something wrong with you.
Right.
Instead of like getting all that away, it's just like, no, your body's never out to get you. Your body's never broken. It is always perfect in responding to the environment around you. And that's what your symptoms are doing. It is healing. And when we kind of recognize that we just, the symptoms are there in the process of the healing stages. And it's like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but healing is, life is hard. Like, just get uncomfortable, lean into this comfort and allow your body to do what it does best, which is make sure that you stay alive and adapt and everything for your best survival. But we have to stop thinking that our body's against us or there's something to fix.
Boom. So well said. And I've often said this with respect to like functional medicine as well. It's instead of prescribing pharmaceuticals for symptoms, it's now prescribing supplements, synthetic supplements for symptoms. And it's even worse because it's under the guise of holistic.
Yes.
Since we're on that topic though, the germ theory piece for you. So when did that come in? And then as a nurse who worked in an emergency context for all intents and purposes, how did you reconcile some of the cognitive dissonance you were experiencing there?
Yeah, I was kind of aware of 2018 when I started down the rabbit hole of, the vaccine information, childhood illnesses. Like I said, open one door and it leads you to the next. And then naturally it led me to, further books, because I was reading Dr. Thomas Cowan. Then we had mentioned
Goodbye Germ Theory too.
And Goodbye Germ Theory. Yep. And then the other one, What Really Makes Us Ill. Mm-hmm. And so that was really great. And I was like, okay, so like the toxicities, the environment. Okay. It took me a little bit to understand bacteria. That was a little bit longer, but once I heard this about viruses and you see it and just learning about the flawed science and research behind it. I remember learning about the Ender study and that just like killed me. I was like, this is what we're basing everything on.
It's so wild because I get like really excited about this one. I really do. Like my voice just went up because in the foundations of virology, John Franklin Enders, in his own paper, contradicted himself. Well, didn't contradict himself, basically admitted that the results that he is presupposing are evidence of measles could not be trusted because he did the exact same process, except for no possible source of measles, meaning no fecal sample, no blood sample, no sputum sample from a patient who was sick with the effects, which are different than the cause of measles, like the skin lesions and things like this. No sample from that person, did the exact same procedure that he did to, quote, isolate the measles virus and got the exact same results with no possible source of measles present. And what's so wild about that, first off, like in and of itself, that paper is like, oh, he's basically saying that his results are meaningless and they can't be trusted. But that is the foundational piece of so-called evidence for all of virology that all of the viral isolation processes now are based off of.
Yes.
That is wild to me.
It is, yeah. And then you go further, right? Because you said like when you start learning more and then you go and I was like, okay, learn about Louis Pasteur. How did he come up with this? Like rabies and pasteurization, about listeria bacteria. But it's like, but you never looked at what the cows were feeding, how they're being cared for, all these things. Like they don't take it any step further. And then the relationship with the Rockefellers. And I'm kind of just going over this quickly because I assume most of your audience is.
And I can put more resources in the show notes on this topic specifically for any like new nurses that are coming across this are like, whoa, okay.
It was a lot, and then it was furthermore in 2020, I saw someone speaking differently. And so Dr. Melissa Sell, and we're blessed to have her come this year to our Reclaiming Birth conference. But she started talking about something I had heard loosely years before, but again, wasn't ready to hear it, was German new medicine. And wherever people might stand on that, but it just actually led me to just trusting the body more and just understanding that every symptom is there for a reason and not to fight against it. And just that our body is just like perfect in what it does to adapt. So, a lot of people, are hardcore German new medicine. And I would probably I'm kind of leaning more that way. And even if you're not, basically it actually even brought me further into faith as well. Because I'm like, we are just created so amazingly. Like we are just able to adapt. We're able to detox. We're able to heal. Like we can do all these things and just trust and then understanding our mind and how we perceive each situation. Are we going to lead more into fear on this? Are we going to lean more into trust? Are we going to surrender it? Are we going to, go into like worst case scenario? Whatever we think or how we perceive a situation, I think people don't realize how much that actually affects and comes out in the physical as well.
100%. Yeah, I won't comment too much. I'm actually interviewing Melissa in a few months on German new medicine. I've interviewed her before, and I'm 100% on board with our psyche and the way we perceive an event has a measurable impact in actually can cause us to express illness in very specific ways. And I've even had some pretty wild specific things show up with respect to my health that are perfectly in alignment with the conflicts that Germany medicine lays out. The only thing that I question is a lot of the people that are gung-ho on Germany medicine tend to be absolute about it. Like, this symptom can only arise from this. Again, I know they acknowledge toxicity and malnutrition, of course, in an acute sense. But I know multiple examples of people who have had a very specific symptom, and they go back into their psyche and really look, and they're like, no, I genuinely did not have that specific conflict occur. This is sticking out in my psyche as the conflict that occurred, but this is supposed to line up with that symptom. So it's the only thing is, like, I think there could be some nuance in terms of how the conflict expresses when it comes to symptoms. I think there is a lot of very, I don't know how to put this, like there's strong indication for a lot of the conflicts related to certain symptoms, but I don't think it's absolute. That's the only thing.
And I think sometimes we have to get out of our own heads with this. We want to know everything.
Yes.
And we want to know why.
Yes.
And we want to know, what was this caused by? Was it this? And the reality is, sometimes we're never going to know, because sometimes there's patterns that came up in utero. You know, you're not going to remember what kind of happened to your mom while she was carrying you, because like that is in your, your cells. As a child, all these things, all these little tracks or triggers that I'm sure Melissa will get into are just there. So whether it's, that nuanced, yes, because who knows, but I think the bigger thing is that we just have to accept that we don't always know.
Yeah.
And then that's okay. And I remember we had traveled, we were in Nicaragua, came back to Canada. I ended up with this rash, and I was like, could be this. And I was like, I don't know what it's from, but I was like, thank you, body, for responding perfectly to whatever I came in contact with, or the environment or my thoughts. Thank you for taking care of me. And I don't need to know. I just know that you are adapting to my best survival, and that's enough. And then fully just trusting, and it was all fine.
That's beautiful. And imagine if everyone thought like that with respect to any symptoms that come up, like, wow, thank you, body, for expressing health.
Yeah.
And adapting and responding and
taking care of me.
Beautiful and brilliant. Yeah. And taking care of me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Specifically regarding the phenomenon of two or more people getting sick in the same space with similar symptoms, I have a lot of thoughts on what is like very plausible explanation for that. I don't need to get in that right now. I'd like to hear from you as the, would you still call yourself a healthcare professional, or would you say former at this point? Okay. No, that is absurd. Yeah. Okay. As a former healthcare professional, that was hilarious. The disgust on your face. No. That was so funny. Okay. As a former healthcare professional, how did you wrap your mind around that? How have you recontextualized that phenomenon of two or more people getting sick in the same space?
Yeah. I mean, once you kind of look into it, it's not that hard to comprehend, because it's just like, okay, well, one, you could be perceiving the exact same situation. Two, maybe you are in the same household, eating the same things, around the same things, or whether it's an emotional thing, we're around the same emotional. But then there's that other piece, is the resonance, right? So trees are so incredible, and mushrooms are so amazing, and they're all connected because trees, communicate through their roots. And then you have the mycelium in the earth, and they're always sending messages to each other of like, this is here, do this, or whatever communication they need, or sending nutrients. Oh, you need more of this. Okay, we'll send this way. Like the interconnectedness in the earth is so incredible. And it's amazing to me to think that we are not the same. Because we are nature, we are the same, and we just connect and communicate differently. And this is where I finally had to understand bacteria. Bacteria is all around us. And to think of that we are 90% more bacteria than we are human cells. And so the bacteria communicates just like it does in nature. If you see like the fungi, the different molds, the different this, like they're communicating, cleaning up, or doing whatever they need to do. And we are the same. So I guess that's kind of like a little kind of, same environment, same upbringing, same, experience, same whatever your situation.
Same exposure to weather
same
patterns.
Exposure, whatever it might be. Or you're picking up on that person's resonance, and you are coming into that energy and feeling the same. And I say that to parents as well when, their child is going through some healing. and they want to panic and they're kind of fearful. And it was like, first, you have to regulate yourself. You have to remove that fear, and you have to trust and know that you are that protector for your child. Like, your energy space is going to affect how they continue to heal and process and adapt. So it's really amazing to see like our own emotions, how they do affect or display or interact with those around us. So I guess that's kind of a bigger question of like, it could be the environment. It could just be shared energy that we have with one another.
Or you need a combination of both.
Yeah.
Or something else that we haven't even like looked into at all or thought about, because most of the world and all the funding is myopically focused on this totally disproven paradigm.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so many other things.
And that's the thing. Like, we are so divinely created. It's wild to think that we're ever going to understand it by, Petri discs or isolating this, or like, you can't isolate or test the soul and spirit and like the divinity within us. Like, we just can't. And I think sometimes it's just, I don't know, it's been the last few years more exciting for me just to be just in complete awe without having to try to understand, but just coming into this like just immense gratitude of like, we are just so incredible and it's exciting.
I love that so much. One of the quotes that you had from your video, I was like, that is a quote right there. God doesn't make mistakes, humans do.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, that's it right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a mistake, just like you said, to take excised tissue from a complex physical, chemical, emotional, spiritual, biological being, throw a bunch of stuff on it in a lab, and then assume that tells you exactly what happens in a human being that's fully intact. It's insane.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about birth now.
Yes.
Yeah. Reclaiming birth.
Okay. So that came to be in 2023. We were blessed to become pregnant with our third child. And at this point, I didn't know if that was even a possibility. When I had my first two boys were in the hospital, like my first son, I believed home birth should be illegal. I really did think that birth was dangerous. We thank goodness for the medical system to save us. And so when people asked, are you going to read any books or do anything? And I was like, no, why would I? I've seen birth. I work in the unit. Like, I know what it looks like. I'm going to go in there. They're going to tell me what to do, and baby's going to come. That was my mindset for my first. And it's interesting now looking back when you have more information, because I had a stretch and sweep done, which is horrific and is not benign and has extreme consequences from that. And I didn't know at the time. I was like, okay, so you do. And it was so painful. And then I ended up a few days later having a trickle down my leg. And, I did all the tests prior. So I was GBS positive. And I was like, oh, my water broke. It looks like it. I better go get it checked because I'm GBS positive. I'm going to have to start the antibiotics, like all the things. And so went in. They confirmed my water had broke. And it's interesting now because a trickle can happen and your amniotic fluid replenishes itself, and it's never a concern or worry, but don't know. GPS is another one that constantly changes. I'm not going to get too into that, but it's just like, that fear base of GBS positive. You could be positive, the negative, positive. It does not matter.
It's meaningless.
It is meaningless.
It's meaningless, especially like understanding bacteria are pleomorphic and like they're always going to change based on the context of that situation at that time, based on your terrain.
Absolutely.
Like it is meaningless. And nonetheless, they're not disease causing. So even if you are GBS positive, it means nothing. And it's so wild. That's a big one for us, because with our first, we didn't do vaccines, but we did every single other intervention. Kylie was GBS positive. So I think we looked at the charts like about a year ago, and she received 6 rounds of antibiotics during labor or something like that, like insane amounts. And then Pitocin, epidural, like the whole cascade of things. Oh, sorry, the baby's not coming down. So now we're going to have to do emergency C-section. Like the typical story that you hear time and time again. And it's cool because Kylie has her own redemption story of next birth was a VBAC at a birthing center, which was literally just in a bathtub in a master bedroom that was converted into a quote birthing center. And the next one, a home birth. And like seeing that step up to just continue to trust the body, trust that this is a normal biological function that is beautiful for women, and it is not a medical emergency. No. It is insane to think that.
Absolutely it is. Yeah. I love all of that. I love just hearing redemption stories and just coming into that, because it is so powerful. And we don't realize all these little decisions or these little things affect long-term. They can. And so, then I went in, then it was like, okay, well, you're GBS and you're not going into labor because baby wasn't ready. He was not ready to come out. That was not his timeline. And it's interesting because baby is the one that decides. They send, the hormones to trigger and they're like, I'm ready to breathe on the other side now. I'm ready. We can go through this together. But baby triggers the whole labor and coming out. And it was not his time. And so I ended up being induced, and that I was super naive with the Pitocin. I was like, okay, gradual. They're just going to go up a little bit. It'll be a gradual feeling. No, it went from like 0 to like, holy shit, like get an epidural like now. It was like immediate just discomfort. Had the epidural, and I was so grateful because I was on track, much like Kylie, to, end up in a C-section. That is the complete labor funnel. But fortunate, I was able to birth Logan, and, or got taken out, all the things, like who knows at the hospital, couldn't feel anything. And it was placed on my chest. And this part is important because now looking back from that moment to Adley, and it's, he was placed on my chest and it was like, oh, you're here. It was exciting.
Right.
He's here. But that was why I said, you're here. Like, oh, I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl. Oh, and I pulled him up. I was like, oh, it's a Logan. Like we had the name. So
Right.
It's a Logan. Yeah. And, you're here. So placed my chest. But we had really significant issues with breastfeeding. Like it was horrific. It was ripped raw, strawberry milk. Sorry, listeners, TMI. But, for the women out there, it's a thing. And, somehow I persevered and we figured it out. But I just remember not bonding with him. And every time he cried, I remember just like feeling that obligation, like my toes would like crunch. Like I just, and I remember feeling guilty. Am I not supposed to be a mom? Like, where's this maternal like instinct? Like, why am I not bonding? And that created a whole bunch of things. But now I can see where that all came from, right? From the, what is it? The not, I'm losing my words. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Like this synthetic chemicals that were delivered to you rather than like
the natural hormones that are supposed to be released. The
exactly.
Artificial is what I was looking for. It was like the artificial process of it all. My body was not ready and able to receive or have the oxytocin, all these things, the endorphins that help you bond and connect with your baby were all missing.
Yeah.
Because it was Pitocin, it was the epidural, and then here's a baby. So,
and that may have been some of the issues with breastfeeding too.
Absolutely. Yeah. It completely affects all of that. Yeah. With the baby, with me, the milk, like all of it. It was all connected. Mm-hmm. And so that was my first experience. Liam, I was ready for the vaccine, saying no to that. I was hoping to not be induced. But it's really interesting because then I was trying natural ways to induce. It was like, okay, I'll go to a massage, get those electrodes. Okay, I'll go acupuncture. I'll do all these things. But an induction is an induction. There's no such thing as a natural induction either. That baby is going to be ready when that baby's ready, and you cannot predict or try to change the timeline. So that was a good learning lesson in that birth as well. He came, same thing, hospital, here you are. And again, another epidural. And so kind of like learning, then 2020 came and all the stuff, learning about responsibility, never wanting to go into a hospital again, seeing how horrific that was, really seeing the harms we were causing to women that were coming in. We were taking babies away from mother that didn't hit 5 pounds. So if they're just under 5 pounds, we would take the baby away, place it in an isolate, hooked up to the machine alone. That is the last place that baby needs to be. Like baby just needs skin to skin and to be with its mother and to regulate and just everything. And so I was learning all this stuff, the hats, learning how harmful hats are, so simple. And so I was like, I never want to be in the hospital again. And I learned about physiological birth, undisturbed birth, and what that could look like. And I remember my births were not traumatic because that's what I thought birth was. But when I did learn about what birth could look like, when again, I was open to receive the information, I felt robbed of an experience that I didn't know existed. Mm. And that hit me really hard. And I remember thinking, I never want any other woman to feel this way, to not know their options, to not know what they're capable of, to not know what their body was designed to do, to not know what it's like to bring life into the world. So reclaiming birth was starting to create in my mind. And then we became pregnant with, after a loss with baby girl, and I was almost 40. Geriatric pregnancy.
Quote, geriatric pregnancy, which is still insane to me.
Absolutely. It starts at 35.
Which is insane.
Yes.
And I have friends who are holistically leaning, holistically inclined, who have literally said that. So they're like, yeah, but I'm pretty worried because I'm 36. I'm like, what?
Yeah, no.
Like Ayla Cuenca. Do you know Ayla? Ayla Cuenca, she's a doula. She's incredible. So she's a doula birth educator out of
I do.
Florida. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's speaking
awesome
at our conference too.
Oh, she is? Okay.
Yes, name was so quick. Her last name, yes, you said it so
Ayla
beautifully.
Cuenca.
Yes,
Yeah, she's so rad. Ayla, if you hear this and this is incorrect, please correct me, or you can just correct in the comments. But I'm almost 100% sure she knows of people, of some cases, and this is an extreme case, where like women in their late 50s or 60s have given birth in some cases. And again, that's like extreme case. But I have friends who are 46, 47 who just gave birth to their third or fourth kid, and like they're totally fine.
If you can get pregnant, you can have birth. You can give birth.
Right.
Simple as that, without overcomplicating it.
Yes, it's insane to think otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah. So at this stage, I was like doing everything differently. I hired a traditional birth companion, Billy Harrigan, who's one of our platinum sponsors at the event. And she's like the reason why Reclaiming Birth exists. She is such an incredible gift to women. She's been 40 years pioneering this path to get more understanding around what our bodies are capable of. And so I was blessed to have her beside me, as well as my co-partner in the conference. Christina was there. And the whole pregnancy was just complete trust. No tests, no appointments, nothing. And it was actually the most peaceful pregnancy out of the all three, because I wasn't relying on information outside of me for another test. Like, are the results going to be okay? So there's some like weird artifact on that ultrasound. Have to do it again. Like, is the heart okay? It was just complete trust within me, my body, and this baby. And there's a scripture, I believe it's Psalm 139:13. And it's knit in your mother's womb in that secret place. And that stood out to me so much, because it's like, yeah, it's a secret place. Like, it's sacred. It's secret. Like, there's no one that's supposed to be having eyes on that or seeing in there. It is just for God's creation and baby and mom just to connect. No one else needs to know what's going on in there. And so just surrendering to that throughout, the 39 weeks I carried her. And then when labor came, it was pretty intense. It was just full on in my back is where I was feeling everything. And my husband, it was incredible to see. And I know that you as a father would probably through your stages feel this too, is that the first two, he was a bystander, didn't know any better. But this one, he was fully involved, and I couldn't have done it without him. And he just, oh my gosh, he never took his hands off my back. That's all that helped me was his pressure on my lower back. And it was amazing that, that connection, even in his involvement in being there. And it was like his calm and his like strength there that I was like, okay, like he's calm. I know he's here. And it allowed me to feel safe as well, that, okay, I can bring baby into this world. And so she was born, all fours on my bed. And she came out and called. And I remember you saying this with Dr. Zach Bush when he was here too. And I always wonder, because they always do, like they artificially break the waters. And I'm curious as to how many babies are actually meant to be born that way if we didn't interfere.
And also the statistics on physiological home birth versus a hospital birth.
Absolutely.
I bet there's more in-call babies at home than there are in hospital, because it's naturally just like a smoother, more calm, more flowy process of trusting than like a quick interject, like bombard with chemicals process,
Mm-hmm. And it was just so incredible. I remember in the thick of it, and I remember I ended up finding a spot. You never know. I had these images. We all have probably thoughts of like what we think it's going to look like. But I ended up just falling on my side, not falling, but finding this place where I laid on my side. And that is where I stayed for a while. And I was like on the kitchen floor was where I ended up, and holding on to a chair leg. So when things were really intense, I would squeeze that, my husband there. And it was incredible, because you hear of this like liminality phase of like you're kind of in between, betwixt and between.
Like in between worlds almost, right? Yeah.
And I did, like, as much intensity as I was feeling in that discomfort, it's like, am I dreaming? Like I would go for like just 30-second bursts of like a dream, like a rest. And it was so wild. I'm like, am I like actually like dreaming? And you leave your body. And I remember as I was in that position, I just remember envisioning, okay, baby coming down and opening up, baby coming down and opening up, and just being in this kind of like rhythmic place and, holding on to the chair when needed. And then the catecholamine surge came in. That's like the adrenaline to wake you up because baby's ready. But at that point, this is all like in reflective looking back. But I got this like tense, like, am I slowing this process down? I remember just getting up and saying that, like, am I slowing this down by just laying here and doing nothing? I just felt like I did like get up and like do something. I'm like, I'm just delaying this.
But you weren't at all.
No, absolutely not. It was like moving the process along, but
you're like having this like psychedelic experience. You're like, wow, there's something. Whoa, what am I doing? That's funny. That's funny.
But that's that catecholamine surge, that adrenaline that it prepares you because you have to be called back into your body.
Yeah.
So you have to come back into like, your neurospace to be ready to bring baby in. And then that adrenaline also wakes baby up to be like, you're about to breathe soon. You better be ready. And it's always in that moment where most women will say that they're like, oh my gosh, like I can't do this anymore. I'm going to die. Like whatever, like crazy things are in that moment. And I remember Billy took my hands and she said, you can, and you will, and you're safe and you're strong. And you will do this just like every other woman before you. I was like, okay. And I did. And baby came. And it was kind of funny in that moment. It was like a little water balloon because when it hit the bed, it was like burst. But this is the difference and why I brought up when my son was placed in my chest. Because when I looked at her, it was, we did it. And just those like simple words were so powerful. Knowing that we had just like overcame that. I know that she had worked and she was a part of it and we had did that journey together and that was like, we did it. And the room was silent and Billy will call it the hot minute. And I was able just to look at her and just kind of come back into myself and have that moment of no one bothering us and just that able to collect ourselves. And even that alone was so powerful because I think of how many women don't get that brief but so important moment before their baby's taken away and whisked off and they have no idea what's going on. But yeah, that we did it. It was and it was then that I was like, every woman needs to know this. And then after that was when Reclaiming Birth Conference came to be.
So cool. That is so incredible. Wow. That's incredible. I know there, correct me if I'm wrong on this, there's a piece of, like, there's an important piece of reclaiming birth in that where you chose to do the event.
Yes.
Like, okay. Yeah. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, it's in my hometown. Yes. But it is located kitty corner to the hospital that terminated me. And I want them to wonder where all the women are going. And I want them to wonder why it's slowing down over there. And they're aware of us. They've been trying to shut us down. But it was kind of strategically placed. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so cool. That's so badass. Oh man, especially with all you went through, like what, like your birth itself, of course, that's a story of redemption based on, the 2 previous births you had. But that is also a full circle redemption story.
Hey, I have to share this I didn't even realize until after, I think just like, the preparation of the event and everything. And I knew we had picked that location, it was perfect for families. There's a pool, it's beautiful, and it's across from the hospital, all these things. But it was once the event was over and we had a room just to kind of like soak it in, like at the hotel and just to kind of relax. And I'm looking and I knew this, but for some reason I didn't put it together until that moment. I was like, oh my gosh, I wrote my nursing exam in that exact room.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So like talk about full circle moment, like coming around. Yeah.
That is so cool. So if you could you share as we're wrapping up here, just what Reclaiming Birth is about, what the summit is about? This is your
third year.
Third year. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Please.
It's really just to teach and educate about undisturbed physiological birth. But deeper than that, it's to show that we can do it. We have always done it. We can do it better than what they're telling us. And it's to come back into, who we are, and to bring life into the world the way it is meant to, and to keep the family unit strong and together. So this year, a big part of that is bringing in the men. So the men can understand that they're the protectors, the advocates, and they are there to create that environment of safety So the women do feel safe to go out of their body into that betwixt and between place and bring life into the world. So we really wanted to make it a family event, just so people understand how, important this is to set the foundation. Because when you realize what you're capable of, and in that moment, and then you see your body and how powerful it is, and then your child's coming out without anything, and then you're setting the stage of like, okay, and this is how I'm going to raise our family moving forward. And all the hardships, whatever might come, but in health and wellness, but in life, and you're starting to set yourself up for a totally different path. And so this is not just like to change women's pregnancies today, but this is like, we call it a movement, because this is changing generations to come. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Boom. Epic. That is amazing. Mm-hmm. So cool. And hopefully I'll be able to speak at Reclaiming Birth sometime in the spring, in the one in Montreal. If you,
we kind of wanted, we were just trying to figure that out timing wise, but I just thought it'd be so great if you came and shared your experience as a dad. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really hoping I can come to the one in Montreal. We'll see with timing. But
we'll make something work. You'll be at one of them.
We'll make it work. We'll make it work. I mean, this is a topic I'm so passionate about, because your journey of birth is similar in many ways to our journey with our 3 kids. And when you see that physiological birth that is undisturbed, where you're just surrendering and trusting the process, trusting the woman is trusting her body, and she's in a safe container, and just how beautiful it is. Like, after our 3rd, I was so on fire about that I just went off on social media in a variety of ways. And I think that's when whoever is organizing in Montreal one contacted me. We were like, hey, we want you to come speak. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, it's amazing. But I so appreciate you and everything you're doing. This was such an awesome conversation. This is amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, because I was so surreal sitting here, and I'm just really honored. So thank you.